I wanted to keep the integrity of the original look. The original look, though, it always looks different in every theater. For some reason, I mean, all films do, and it's in 7:1 sound. Now I know, and I wanted to keep the integrity, and I did keep the original mix, but there is total surround that I think is really cool, and to see it on a big screen without scratches and kind of liquid vision. I didn't change it that much. I think I did things that so as not to ruin the integrity of the original film. And I mean, there's still some grain but since now you see it again so big, so large on a big screen, that in itself, the dynamics of that, I think, we find very pleasing. And that's what I hope. And I've seen it with audiences before, and no one yet has said, "Oh, he went too far with it."
Right.
And it had to be done, or we would have lost the film forever.
Actually, a general yet concrete question. The film, of course, has become a myth. Could you tell me what precisely was your ambition when you started this project, when you had the idea and when you started shooting? What exactly you had in mind?
Well, I wanted to make something more than a horror film. I mean, I wanted to make a film about a very bad day for two sets of people that are on collision course, that all have their own problems. They're bringing their own problems. They're dysfunctional in their own way, and parenthetically, ironically, it's horrifying. And so it's two forces on collision course that all have their problem. And I wanted the people to be the characters to be real and not just start when the movie starts, but I wanted everyone to have a solid backstory.
Yeah.
And so also I wanted to make a film that you would read and process on because it's constructed of multiple narratives. Like the sound is a character, the information is a character, without making it expository. The visual style is another character, and I'll give you a for instance, and that is, we all assume this is a film about cannibalism. Mm-hmm. Nowhere in the film is it said that you have to come to that conclusion. And the only way for you to come to that conclusion is to go through a process of thought that you wouldn't go through if the characters were false.
Maybe the word isn't said also because those people, I mean the family, they just continue their work in some way.
They are, and they have their life. I mean, Leatherface is what he is. I mean, he's terribly frightened by the time he's committed murder for the third time. He knows when his older brother gets home that he's in much trouble, and they all have a life before we cut into the movie and the movie starts. And so the things
you mean things you had shot and didn't keep in
no. But in writing and directing, and that they were all in the middle of something.
Okay.
Conflict that pre-exists before cut the movie starts. So what you have is characters that you can believe in enough to interact with them.
And how conscious were you that this film was going to maybe not break the rules of horror films, but still, really put it in a very new way?
Well, I deliberately set out to do things like that was counter to conventional Hollywood filmmaking. In conventional Hollywood filmmaking, someone wouldn't jump through a plate glass window twice. They would say, well, they did it once, and so let's think of something new for the second time for escape. But the character in her place would do anything. I mean, she would jump through 4 plate glass windows. But I mean, that's just one way to express what I tried to do, or what I did based on having seen almost everything up until that point, and noticing the patterns and the false things that have been happening, not just in the genre film, but in films, in the formulaic way that films are being made in the U.S. and particularly corporate films, and I just wanted to break the rules, every chance I had, and make something that was outrageous.
And the thing is, you didn't really, before making this film, you didn't really see yourself as a horror movie maker. You were kind of designated to more art house films.
I was, in Eggshells, for instance. There was a.
Tell us a word about this film.
Beg your pardon?
About this film, Eggshells.
Well, it's a film made by the counterculture or hippies, about hippies, and really about hippies, not Hollywood impression of what a hippie is. I wanted to make films about real people, real situations, almost like sneaking into their lives and making a documentary about characters. I mean, it's the characters that are important.
Yeah, about the hippies, the film Texas Chainsaw is pretty hard on hippies actually, because you could feel when watching it that maybe you're more on the family side, and
you can go that way, yes.
And it's almost so a hippie holocaust in some way. I mean, the film is really. Is it actually? I mean, what's?
Well, they have their set of values and they respect their home. Leatherface, when he runs to the window after hitting Jerry in the head with a hammer, and the sun is going down, and he runs to the window and he's freaking out because he's looking out the window, and in his feeble mind, it's where do they come from? They just keep coming to this house, and on automatic pilot, he has gotten himself in terrible trouble. He knows when he's already screwed up enough by cutting down the door, you could go either way with that. They're both true, and there's humor, not played for comedy, but the humor comes from this ironic situation, where for instance, a door that has to be replaced is just as important as 3 people's lives. And also I wanted to show the strength of women. How she does get away, but she circles back around into the into the spider's web, and several times.
Sorry, all the more since in the very last shots of not the very last, but the last shot on her in the film, you know, when she's in the truck.
Yes.
She's almost filmed like a newborn, you know, full of blood and yelling. It's like a total involution in some way. Was it your intention actually?
Yes. I mean, it was. She was newborn, and I respect women's strength. In fact, I'm afraid of their strength. And that was strange for me in the '80s, you know, seeing women's rights group picketing the film, because it's about. I mean, the whole film is about a lot of things. I mean, the country had run out of gasoline. It was going through a gasoline crisis. There was Watergate, so lying. Maybe I was naive, and I thought, you know, everything you saw in the news was the truth. And we were learning that there's so much lies. You know, there's so much things that are not truth, fabrications that are designed as propaganda to drive thought one way or another. And you know, such is the power of cinema. And I was exploring a lot of issues that personal issues that I had.
So very consciously was a film about America and this anxiety of the 70s.
Yes. Oh yes. Oh yeah. I mean, right down to Jim Cito has captured her again and knocked her out with a broomstick and puts her in the car, and he leaves the lights on and has left the lights on. He starts the motor of the truck and sees that he left the lights on, and that becomes more important to him. And he turns off the lights and locks the door, and he comes back and he tells this woman that he's injured. He says, "Hey, you know, the cost of electricity is enough to put a man out of business these days." You know, and he's a kind of he has a morality that he fights against constantly, the dark side of himself, because he can drift off into it, kind of like a bull terrier, you know, designed to go that way. But then he'll pull back from that and become embarrassed and ashamed of his behavior. And so all of the characters in the film do, you know, have something of real life in them.
And innocence, like Leatherface is really filmed like a kid in some way, and that might be one of the big changes, I mean, in the genre, because usually, especially in America, in horror films, you have to protect the innocence, and then you have innocence and the evil. And here, the evil and innocence are kind of mixed.
They are mixed, as in the life I knew growing up.
We've read everywhere that the shooting himself was pure chaos.
Oh well, everyone just hated me. I mean, by the end of it, they hated my guts because I wanted to create tension. You know, I mean, I wanted. If they were going through pure hell and projecting real fear, then you're going to soak it up like a sponge. And the fastest way for me to do that was to say what I meant and mean what I said. And sometimes it wasn't kind. I mean, you know, I didn't hit anyone, but I didn't. But at the end of the film, everyone hated my guts. You know, and because I knew what I wanted, and I would take the camera away from the cameraman and shoot things that I knew I could get because I didn't have time to do it a second time.
Actually, sound would be a perfect question because the sound, well, not only the soundtrack, but all the soundscape and work in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre is amazing. It's almost concrete music. Again, what was the original idea about sound and how did you work on it?
Well, I'd for several years been experimenting with what I called music, and you know, using broken instruments and using, especially broken instruments and non-instruments, and recording analog, and it was something I called music, but I knew I could score the film, and I would go from my living room where I had the chem, the editing machine, into a small bedroom where I had all of these instruments and chalimbas and tin cans hanging from the ceiling and things that I could just mess about with to create something that was kind of like what I was seeing on the film as I was editing it. Something to head you in that direction that I considered to be right. And so I would record a bit and go cut it in and see if it worked, or cut it into one of, say, 3 or 4 tracks and mix the tracks between them to create something that was it was music, but it had a voice and an expression to it that was somewhat more than music. It was a character.
And actually, this sort of quality of chaos that is in the music, you find it also in the editing of the film, which is really experimental. I'm thinking, for example, of the dinner scene,
Yeah.
when you have those screams and then you cut to the eye, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Again, what was the idea? How did this came up?
Oh, it was just my love for cinema and editing, and the what I could do technically to create an emotional effect. In particular, I mean, when she's screaming, and in post-production, when I was cutting, I brought her back to get the shots of the eye, and going down closer and closer into the eye to show how fragile a human being is, but by going into the white of the eye and seeing the blood veins and the membrane between the blood veins, and but at the same time, I wanted to show that it isn't that easy to kill someone. Like in most films before that, one stab of the knife and the character is gone. It was the easiest way, like in war films. Let's get rid of the enemy. All we have to do is punch a hole in him, and he's dead just like that. And so that's why when Kurt, the character, gets hit in the head with a sledgehammer, well, a piece of skull goes down, touches the skull, and he goes into a spasm. And he has to hit him again, and it takes a little while to kill someone. Sorry, it isn't funny, but it's true.
And to go back to the representation of the American South and the rednecks and everything,
Yeah.
nowadays you have inheritance. You have inheritance that still are interested and fascinated by the South and the rednecks and all those things. And how do you take it? Why do you think they are still interested in that?
Yeah, there is a true passion for Texas and the South today in the films from young filmmakers.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I mean, I was on University of Texas campus when Whitman was on the clock tower shooting people, and a police officer came up to me and said, "You go in the building. Someone is on top of the tower shooting." And I was thinking, well, now I hear the gunshots, but several times of the year on the main mall at the university, they would reenact the Civil War. The North being at one side and the South being on another side, and they would shoot blanks at one another. They would shoot cannons at one another. So I'd heard this sound before, and I didn't know I was stunned by, is this man telling me the truth? And he said, go in the building, and turned and ran away from me maybe 10 feet, and he was hit and blown up and killed. And then I ran in the building. So I think because maybe it's violent there. You know, I mean, there's Austin is divided by the Colorado River, and on the north side there are artists and intellectuals, and on the south side of the river there are a lot of drinkers, and there's a highway that goes through Austin called it's Highway 35. It's the most dangerous road in the world, where there's constantly car accidents, suicides, people jumping off the bridge down onto the freeway to get run over or hit by a car. Of course, killing the driver. But there, you know, there's a sense of violence there. Having said that, it's one of the most beautiful. It is the most beautiful place in the United States.